Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark DeVoe, and we want to welcome you all, wherever you are in the world. If this is the very first time you've heard this podcast, or if this is the 400th and somethingth time, it's so lovely to have you. But before we dive in, we'd like to say thank you to all of the people that support this show. In particular, this week, we'd like to thank our new patrons, Sean Dyer and Colin Mofield. Colin and Sean, we are so grateful for your support. And if you would like to be like Colin, if you'd like to be a Sean, pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com/support and find out all the goodies that you can get, including the extended podcasts that we've been doing the last few weeks. You get about an extra half an hour of me and Mark. That, for some people, might, Mark, sound like absolute hell. But if it is
against the Geneva Convention.
But if you are interested, do that and pop along and see all the goodies, the extra goodies you get as well.
And you'll get deep dives. And speaking of deep dives, we've got a new deep dive that came out this week, which features one of our long-term Patreon supporters and podcast supporters. It's a deep dive with Susie Edge, talking about TikTok and how TikTok drove pre-orders for a new book, Mortal Monarchs. And she talks about what content attracts followers, why authors are perfect for TikTok because we tell stories. It's brilliant. She convinced me to get back onto TikTok, and I have. But also Susie's book, Mortal Monarchs. Now, about a week, her book is about the kings and queens of England, Great Britain, and how they've died over the years. Now, I don't know if you've seen the news, Mr. D. We had a death in the royal family recently. You might have seen it on the news, and she was terrified this was going to be. Well, her book is reprinted twice, and it's been an absolute smash hit. So, but her book was pre-ordering fantastically well beforehand as well, and she's brilliant with TikTok. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes so you can check that out. And there's almost 100 other deep dives just like this over on Patreon. And if you join the Academy, they're all in the Academy as well. So yeah, do check it out.
Yeah, and we should mention as well to everyone listening, I know a lot of people hear the words TikTok, as I did, and I thought, oh, that's something for like teens. I don't even know how to download it. I don't know what to do. But Susie smashes the mold, doesn't she? I mean, she openly says, I wasn't going to dance around in a bikini. I mean, Susie, she, what was it now? She got 2.5 million likes, was it?
I think it's 250,000 followers and 5 million likes.
5 million likes.
Yeah.
And she is certainly like breaks the mold. TikTok is now not just for teens. In fact, everything evolves over time. And you're embracing it, Mark. I'm even tempted to have a look. God help me. But so if you want to kind of understand a bit more about what TikTok is and how it works and how it is actually, it is having a huge effect on a number of things, least of all taking down Facebook, it appears at the moment. It seems to be a big challenge for Mr. Zuckerberg. But at the same time, it's, like I said earlier, a few episodes ago, I walked into my big bookstore in town, front page, books trending on TikTok. I'm like, whoa, or book talks, I think they call them. But so the point is there's a lot going on around books, which I don't think we've ever seen before on other social media platforms. So if you're interested in that deep dive, it's an absolute must if you want to get to know a bit more about and see how someone's made a massive success of it. So brilliant.
Good fun.
And with something which is quite a niche area as well, Mark, isn't it, really? I mean, she's picked a very specific interest and found that people love her mini videos on that.
Yeah, well, we've always said that. Find your tribe. If you can find your readers and delight them, which she does brilliantly. Her videos are so entertaining. Then, you're off to the races. So I think it's, you can't please everybody, but when you find the people who love your stuff, it's great. Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, do check it out. Susie is really great fun.
So what else have you been up to this week, Mark?
Oh, I've launched a bookstore.
You've launched a bookstore?
Yes.
Unbelievable. What, you mean you actually kind of went to a bookstore and had to cut a big red ribbon? You're that famous now.
Yeah. I named this bookstore. No. It's like all modern things. It's on the internets. I've got if you go to witchesofwoodville.com, the Village Bookshop, and I will put a link in the show notes so you can check that out. You can buy books direct from me. It's all the rage, So
that's cool.
yeah.
So literally, so have you got a little kind of band of merry men in a back room somewhere, like
you're looking at him.
That's amazing. So they actually, literally, the orders come direct to you.
I opened it. Yeah, I opened it last night. 2 orders this morning. It's fantastic.
Oh,
So
really?
two people bought complete sets of the Witches of Woodville books, which I've signed and stamped, and they get a free bookmark, and they're awaiting collection from my postie, and off they go. So yeah.
So in essence, you become the
Amazon
bookstore, and you can actually earn a little bit more money on each book that you sell, because you're getting the kind of retail part plus the bit you get as the author.
And it's the bundling that's kind of the key. It's this thing that I can offer you something other people can't. I can offer you signed, dedicated copies. So I can put a little message. You get the library stamp, which is exclusive to me. So you get a little stamp in the book that says it's on permanent loan from the Woodville Village Library. And I put a message, and you get a free bookmark, and hand packed. So I'm not expecting to be swept off my feet. Let's be honest. But it was one of these things. I've been meaning to do. Queeve McDonald, friend of the podcast, he did it recently. And,
really?
And I ordered a book from him. And I went to my web guy, and he said, we use WooCommerce, and it's all been very smooth so far. So, yeah.
Well, do you know what? It's interesting you say that, because, I mean, as you know, I launched the very last Monster book for Jen a few years ago. We did the whole thing, apart from 2 local bookstores that said they would stock it. We did the whole thing using WooCommerce, we shifted a lot of books. The other thing that I like about it is it's an opportunity for fans of authors to to invest more in that author, because if the author's getting a larger cut, I always think authors get too small a cut. In fact, everyone listening to this who's an artist will know, every artist in the world does not get enough for what they put into the process. Like the fact that, for example, a retailer make maybe 50% on the cost of a book, and then the author is making a small percentage of that. That's wrong. It should be the other way around. So I think this is great because it empowers the author, and it also means that there's more of a longevity for an author's career, hopefully for the rest of their life, because people that buy direct are actually saying, we want more, we want to support your livelihood, and we want more books from you, please.
Yeah, it's that whole shop local movement, but with a connection with an author. And I do think this is the future. This is why I'm sort of doing this now, because I want to gear up for this, because I think this is where things are going. And also, listeners, I am offering signed copies of Back to Reality now, because it's only signed by me. But once you've got it signed by me, all you have to do is track down Mr. D and get him to sign his half.
Hey, I love that. I love that idea. The first person to track me down with a copy of your signed version in the UK
gets a free hobnob.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
And also Mr. D gets 50% of each sale. So, obviously the money is going to come rolling in now. Mr. D can retire early.
There we go. Hey, that sounds perfect. That sounds absolutely brilliant. I should probably order some at this end as well, so I can do the Canadian distribution end. You see, that's the benefit of us co-writing. When you co-write with people, you should co-write with 7 authors, 1 on each continent, and then you'd have worldwide distribution. How about that? That's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, well, let's dive into our incredible interview.
Hang on. No. I've got to plug one more thing. We've got a live show this week.
Oh, of course.
We're 6 years old. Our podcast has been going for 6 years. So Wednesday, 12th of October, it's 7 p.m. in the UK, 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon MDT, 1 p.m. CDT, 2 p.m. EDT. I'll put a list. You can see it. But anyway, we've got a live show, and it's going to be streamed live on YouTube. You folks are all invited. What we're going to do, we're going to theme it how to make a podcast. So we've been doing this 6 years. We think we're just about getting the hang of it. So we're going to give you a sort of behind the curtain peek at what actually goes into making a weekly 1 hour plus podcast. So we're going to talk about how we've managed to keep going, how we work together remotely, and the key question: will it ever end? I've put this on social media, and people are going, "It's not going to end, is it?" Well, you come to the live show and find out. So if you've got any questions about how we do this, come along. Wednesday, 12th of October. There's a link in the show notes. It's going to be going out on the newsletter. Sign up to the newsletter. More details there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, if you're interested, I mean, podcasting's all the rage now, isn't it, Mark? I mean, we were a little bit ahead of the curve, I guess, 6 years ago. But if you're interested in learning how to podcast, we will do our utmost to completely put you off. No, but in all seriousness, if you are interested, we want to reveal a bit behind the curtain of like what goes into it, because I think a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about giving birth, as I like to call it, giving birth to a baby and then realizing you've got to put it in, nappies and diapers for the rest of their life and keep feeding it. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating. We've already had some amazing questions. By the way, if you are in the BXP team and in the academy, you can submit questions in advance as well for the show, and we'll be looking at those and picking out our favourites. So do pop over there if you want to get your question in before the show. Fantastic stuff. And also, we should say quickly, if you want to get a reminder and a link to the YouTube page where it's all going to be live, go to the newsletter section on our website, bestsellerexperiment.com, click on newsletter, put in your email address, and we'll be sure to send you a reminder. Plus, a weekly email where we tell you about the episode we've just recorded and all the great things we've learned and that you can learn too. So, Mark, let's talk about a returning guest this week. Tell us about our guest this week, Mark.
This is great. This is C.L. Taylor, Callie Taylor, who came on the podcast on episode 127. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes so you can check that out. But Callie is wonderful. Each of her books has hit the Sunday Times bestseller lists. Her first one, Sleep, was there for 7 weeks, which is amazing. The paperback went into the top 10 as well. It was a Rich and Judy Book Club choice. Just incredible. It won the best ebook at that year's Amazon Publishing Readers Award. She sold over 1 million copies of her psychological thrillers in the UK alone. They've been translated into 20 languages. She's been optioned for TV, and she's got a new novel, The Guilty Couple, which is out. It's her 9th thriller. It's pulse-pounding stuff. Now, we recorded this back in June, just before the launch of The Guilty Couple, and we talk about what an author does in the week before publication. But more importantly, we talk about, she's done a brilliant blog piece on how to turn an idea into a novel. So we talk about all sorts of stuff, naming protagonists, wants and needs, inciting incidents, all sorts of really, really good fun. So it's a really good fun chat.
Brilliant. So let's dive in and listen to Mark chatting with the absolutely lovely C.L. Taylor.
Callie Taylor, welcome back to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. If a little bit frantic because I'm 1 week away from publication. So everything is happening at the moment.
So what's the week before publication like for you? What's the priority? You were talking before we start recording. You're talking about prizes. What's the to-do list like for an best-selling author a week before publication?
Yeah, the to-do list is very much lots of interviews that I have to complete. Brilliant podcasts like this one.
Thank you very much.
Yesterday, I actually, not to do with this book, but I went to Portsmouth because one of my young adult books was up for an award. So that took the best part of a day. What else? I'm writing articles for things. I am trying to get ready. Recently, over the last few years, because of lockdown, I do a live launch on my Facebook page.
Right.
And I run like little silly competitions and games for my listeners, my readers. And so I've been gathering prizes and started to think about what those games are going to be and started planning that. I'm sure there's a million other things that I've forgotten, but basically the to-do list in my phone is quite frankly ridiculous. Oh, and I've got a bunch of pre-ordered books coming at any time today that I need to sign by tomorrow. So yeah, busy.
Right. So if we hear a doorbell and you have to run off, that's why.
Yeah, it's probably the books. Yeah.
Fair enough. We'll keep an ear open for that. But this is one of the things that lockdown changed, didn't it? We suddenly online streaming book launches were only a few authors really did them. I know Mark Edwards did them. I remember when he came on the podcast, we thought that's extraordinary. Not many people doing that. But of course, we've all had to become streaming experts during lockdown. How have you made that adjustment? How has that been an easy adjustment for you?
I think the first one that I did, because in 2020, I had 2 books out, a young adult and Strangers, one of my adult books. And I thought I have to do something. Also, in 2020, my publicist was furloughed. So I had to take over all of the publicity. So I was a bit frantic, really, because how were readers going to find out about my book if I didn't have a publicist, and Sainsbury's weren't stocking any books? So, yeah, I kind of took it upon myself. And when I did that first live launch and I saw the numbers clicking up and clicking up, I think at some point I had maybe 400 of my Facebook followers all just watching me. And yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, just being like a one-person show. Really, you're there, you can read their responses, but you're not getting any faces, or reactions other than the words appearing on the screen. But I had a bottle of wine at my side, so I think that helped. But I think I've got used to it now. I tell myself, like, it's an hour. And they are enjoying it. They do like it. Just keep talking. The main issue is deciding when to stop for a sip of water, because then you stop talking and it's just very quiet and you're aware that everybody's just watching you taking a sip of water.
Yes.
So, it's okay. But unlike some authors I know, like Miranda Dickinson, she does a weekly chatty thing show, I think she calls it. And every Wednesday she does a little sort of live with her Facebook followers. I don't think I could do it weekly, but for every book that comes out, then it's quite good fun.
Excellent stuff. Yes, the thing, I drink a lot of water when I'm doing podcasts, and you do worry that the glug 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 and your stomach going boing is going to be picked up by the microphone. But we are here to discuss your fantastic new novel, The Guilty Couple, which is such a terrific premise. Tell us about The Guilty Couple.
So The Guilty Couple is about a woman called Olivia, and she's a pretty average woman. If slightly privileged. She lives in London. She's married an art gallery with somebody that she met at university. And then her world suddenly changes when there's an accusation that she's conspired to have her husband murdered by a hitman. And she goes to court and she's proven guilty. And she realizes that actually it was her husband who set her up. And she serves 5 years in prison of a 10-year term and comes out on license. And she and her cellmate, Smithy, who's a pickpocket and a thief, decide that they're going to prove Olivia's innocence in order to get her daughter back and to get revenge on Dominic, the husband, and also the bent cop, Danny Anderson, who helped Dominic frame her. There's also a mysterious texter who seems to be pulling Dominic's strings, and Olivia has no idea who that is.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Such a great premise. Really hooks you in. Now, we don't do the where do you get your ideas from question on this podcast normally, but you did a blog the other day. You did this fantastic blog, and folks, we're going to put a link in the show notes. Check this out. I wish more authors were this generous and honest about the process of getting from a simple idea to, the first page of prose. But you did this fantastic blog called How Do You Turn an Idea into a Novel? And for you, it started with the desire to write a particular kind of novel and buying a notebook. So let's start there with the single thought, I want to write a heist novel, and the notebook.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to write a heist novel, basically. I've written loads of psychological thrillers, and I just fancy doing something a bit different. But my brand is psychological thrillers. So I was like, how can I write a heist novel and yet be on brand? And so I watched a ton of heist movies. I watched all of the old black and white classic ones, The Killing, Rafifi, all of those. And they were all about men and groups of men stealing diamonds or stealing money. And I just thought, I've seen a few female heist movies, but again, they're all about stealing money, typically. And so I wanted to do something different. So I thought, well, maybe my character isn't trying to, and then I've been framed. And then I thought, why is it so important to prove her innocence? And I thought, maybe she's got a daughter, and she can't see the daughter without, her ex-husband's permission. But if she proves she's innocent, she can do that. And then I added a kind of ticking time clock that appears in the novel, where that starts to suspect that she will never see her again. So that really ups the stakes. I continually ask myself lots of why. My notebook is, why do the characters act like this? Why does Dominic have to stop her? Why is Danny, the detective sergeant, also desperate to stop her? All of this sort of thing. And it sprung from there, really. And in the end, the actual heist itself only takes place in one chapter. But that was the genesis of the idea, and everything kind of hung around it. And hopefully it's one of the most exciting chapters that I've written, because there is so much at stake.
Fantastic. I want to talk about this notebook because I've become a one notebook per project person. So I have a specific notebook for a specific project, and even the cover seems to need to match the mood of the piece, which is probably not healthy. But so is you're writing by hand? You're sticking with one notebook per project, and where are you starting? Is it the why question that you start with?
Yeah, the notebook thing, the last few books, I have gone onto the Papier website, and they do lovely customizable notebooks. And what I'll do for each project is I'll look through all the covers until I find one that chimes with what I want to write, right. Whether it's the mood or the actual image. For The Guilty Couple, I found a cover that had loads of women's faces on it. And, that original idea of a woman and her female friends committing this heist, I was like, perfect, this represents the group of women. I gave it the working title Heist, which is not very imaginative, but at the time that was all I had in my head. And then just C.L. Taylor. And I do this for every book. And behind me, you can't see it, at the back of the trolley, is my new notebook for my new book. And that's just got a picture of a dark rose on it. And I'm not going to tell you what the working title is. But again, it's part of my process to choose that notebook. And I'm almost scared sometimes to start writing in it, but I will write in it. I'll try and write a little bit of a blurb. And obviously that can change. I mean, looking back through the notebook that I wrote for The Guilty Couple, loads of it has changed. But I'll write, I'll watch films for research. So I watched a lot of prison documentaries, and I wrote notes on those just to add little bits of authenticity when I was actually writing the novel. Even though there's only one chapter where Olivia's actually in prison, I still watched loads, partly because I wanted to see the impact that going to prison would have on a woman.
Yeah, I saw, again, this is all on the blog, folks. You're speaking to detectives, barristers, probation officers. You're watching a Channel 5 prison documentary. You're making notes all the way through. This is all, grist to the mill, isn't it? And it's all going in this one resource, this one notebook. There's one thing, and authors, we don't talk about this enough. You do a whole bit about naming the protagonist. And I think you have the additional problem of, you've been writing for 10 years now. You've written all kinds of books. You think, hang on, have I called someone this name before? It's quite a dilemma, isn't it? And it can be one of these barriers that you think, I can't write this until I get the name right. Is that the same with you?
Yeah, that is absolutely true, and particularly for this book. On the inside page, I've actually listed all of the titles of all of my crime books and all of the names of the female protagonists to try and work out what names are left. Yeah. Obviously there's loads of names left, but they always have to kind of fit the mood of the character, fit the class of the character, the age of the character. So Olivia in The Guilty Couple, I think she was originally Alex, and then she became Laura, and then she was Jude. And she was Jude for quite a long time. And then I was like, no, she's not a Jude. And then she's Olivia. So, I crossed that out. The bank cop was originally called Brooke for quite a long time. And then no, she became a Danny. Smithy was Duffy, my thief.
Right.
But yeah, I can't settle into planning a book until the names are right. And I'm even doing that at the moment in my new one. I'm a bit like, oh no, I don't think she feels like an Imogen. I think, and and so I'm just going through Facebook. I'm looking at all of my friends' lists. I'm looking at their friends' lists for a name that just chimes. Because I look at the baby most popular baby names for a year, but actually they can be quite bland. And you need those names to contrast with each other enough so that the reader goes, oh yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason that I called the thief Smithy. I mean, her name's Kelly Smith, but you're going to distinguish Smithy from Olivia, for example. And Danny is almost an androgynous kind of name. So I do spend quite a lot of time thinking about the names and trying to get them to fit together. And they can't all start with the same letter, and they can't all have the same number of syllables. So, yeah, there's a lot of crossing out in the notebook.
Yeah, it's also that thing, you get halfway through a book and you realise you've got 3 characters, their names all starting with the letter S or something, and start getting confused in your mind, let alone the readers. And then exactly. Another great, because you've got lovely photos on this blog, of the handwritten notes, and so you've got Jude crossed out, then Liv, and you got wants, needs, flaws. Are these, for you, the most important aspects of your characters?
Yeah. Once I've decided, what the book is about, and I've sort of got my character, whether or not I've got their name right or not, the most important thing is to work out what they want, what their objective is in the book. So obviously for Olivia, it's to clear her name, get her daughter back, and get revenge on her husband. And then the need is probably the bit that takes me longer, the emotional arc of the character. And I spend a lot of time thinking about that because in a way, the need almost needs to kind of clash with the want. So, maybe a character is very selfish and then they change and become selfless. And actually with Olivia, I struggled quite a bit with the need, because at first I was like, oh, maybe she's really resentful and she needs to learn to accept what has happened and the fact that people treat her like a criminal. And I just thought, no, that doesn't feel right. Actually, I can't tell you what the need is because it's quite important. It's revealed at the end of the book. So I can't tell you that. The flaw, I think the flaw is also important. That's another internal obstacle in the character that stops them from, or makes it harder for them to achieve their want. So I think quite hard about that as well. I think Olivia's flaw is probably just that I'm not sure. I'm going to have to think about this. What is Olivia's flaw? I think she's too trusting, perhaps. Yeah.
But that said, without giving anything away, as an author, you are very conscious of that character's journey of change, going from A to Z, becoming almost the opposite of who they were at the beginning of the story. And do you feel that once you have that ending, once you have that turnaround, that's when you can really start writing? Does that work for you?
I mean, it does change sometimes. Often, I mean, I plot. I use the 4-act structure. I've got loads of index cards stuck on a whiteboard beside me. But as I write it, I get to know the characters and things start to change. And then one event may pop into my head and that has a knock-on effect on the other. So a lot of the scenes that I plan at the beginning will end up changing quite significantly sometimes. And often the ending will change. I think I had quite a different kind of sort of very final scene in mind, final couple of scenes. And then as I got nearer, I was like, no, it needs to be this. This in my gut is telling me that this is the correct resolution for this book. And I was nervous because, I sort of plucked it out of thin air and I was like, oh, what if readers haven't followed me on this journey to this resolution? But actually, so far, I've had not a single complaint about the ending. And lots of people say it was the right ending. Right. So that's good. Trust your gut if your gut's telling you different from what you've planned.
Brilliant stuff. And there's, again, this blog is just pure gold dust, folks. There's lovely stuff here about inciting incidents. And again, your handwritten notes, there's lots of why. There's lots of questioning and interrogating those and what the other characters want as well. So you've got your protagonist, you've got her wants and needs and flaws, and now you're just piling it on, testing her with these other characters and themes. And is that where you feel you're getting momentum? Is that where it all starts to come together?
Yeah, I need to know those initial things. The inciting incident, because Liv is actually that is her flaw. She's very by the book. She doesn't put a step wrong. She would never want to break the law. And when she comes out of prison, she's almost prepared to just sit it out and have these hourly meetings supervised with her daughter. But something needs to change that, to put her on the path where she will take more risks and break the law in order to get what she wants. So I had to come up with a really good inciting incident that changes a woman who is law abiding into somebody who will potentially break the law to get what she wants. And I thought a lot about that. And at first I thought it was something to do with the husband, whatever. And I thought, no, not strong enough. And then as soon as I realized it was all to do with the daughter, and that she finally sees her daughter after 5 years, and her daughter rejects her. Her daughter thinks she tried to kill the father. And, as a mother, I could only imagine how that would feel, not to have seen your child for 5 years and then your child rejects you and thinks you are an awful person who tried to kill the other parent. And I thought, oh my God, yeah. That would make me really want to prove that I wasn't that person. And so that inciting incident was so important once I got that. But then I was like, right, yes, now I've got a rounded feel for this character and what's driving her. And regardless of what I throw at her in the rest of the book, that's the thing that's going to drive her through the book. That love for her daughter, that need.
Yeah, that's all good grist to the mill, isn't it? Another thing we don't talk about enough as authors is fear of the first page, and you talk about it here. And this, you've got a blank, and again, you're not typing on a laptop; you're writing it down in this notebook and finding the voice of your protagonist. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I've developed almost, I won't say phobia, but I do not like opening up, a new Word document, or I use YWriter, which is like a free Scrivener light.
Right.
And I just don't like seeing that empty project and that empty first scene. I find it hugely intimidating. And there's just too much self-consciousness there and awkwardness. And, you've got this great idea bubbling in your head and you don't want to spoil it by actually writing it. So what I've done over the last few books is try and write that first chapter in my notebook. Where all the ideas are and research and everything, because it feels less pressure. And also I think because as a child I wrote so many short stories and books in notebooks that it almost feels like fun, and it feels like less pressure. You can scribble bits out. You're not staring at a word count in the bottom corner. So yeah, I mean, you've seen on the blog post the photo that I took. Most of it is scribbled out. I wrote, a page and a half of my first chapter, and huge amounts are scribbled out, and then there's arrows writing bits more. And as I put in the blog post, pretty much only the first line actually survived.
Yeah.
But it's almost kind of like a warming up exercise. You're trying to find the character's voice, and you're like, no, they wouldn't say that. Rewrite it, add in this, and it helps. And I've done exactly the same for the new book now. Feeling like, no, I can't do it. So getting the notebook out and just, and I've actually had 2 attempts in the new book to get started. I realized that I'd started a little bit too far. So I had to rewrite another chapter. But, I worked that out by writing in the notebook and just thinking about it and stuff. It's good for, anybody who's a bit scared to just start, just get a notebook and the pressure lifts. It's good.
Yeah, I think you're definitely onto something there. That thing of it takes you back to writing in school. It takes you back to when there was no pressure, there was no contract, there's no editor, there's no deadline. You're just doing it just for the joy of it. I think there's definitely something in that. Fantastic. Well, folks, go to the blog, read the blog, then read The Guilty Couple, compare and contrast. This is a whole education for you. This is you will learn so much by going through this. And Callie, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's a great sort of peek behind the curtain of how an amazing author works like that. And I find it very reassuring that I have many of the same fears and uncertainties as well. It doesn't really go away, does it? Each book is a new kind of adventure, isn't it? A new journey.
Yeah, I'm on number 10, which is actually book 14, because I've written in other genres as well. And no, it's exactly the same. And also there's that feeling of being at the bottom of a mountain. You're like, oh, now I really know, when my legs are going to ache, or, when I'm going to want to sit down for a bit, sort of thing. And it's taking those first steps. But, after a while, you get into your stride. So
yeah.
It'll be fine. It always is.
Now, I normally ask what's coming next. You mentioned a notebook with a black rose. I guess you can't talk too much about that, but it's going to be another thriller. It's going to be full of twists and turns and all that stuff that we love. Yeah,
it's if you can say that the new book, The Guilty Couple, is a slight difference to my normal psych thrillers, in that the terrible thing has already happened, and this is the aftermath. It's like that again. It's more about women taking control than terrible things happening to them. That is all I will say.
Excellent.
Because I'm just too suspicious to put it out there when I've only written 1,500 words.
Yeah, totally understand. Well, we'll all be, in the meantime, we've got The Guilty Couple to enjoy, folks, and all the other books that Callie has written. So do check those out. Callie, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. It's a joy as always. It's been absolutely brilliant, and hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been great.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Mr. Stay, that was fascinating. And again, so much to talk about. Let's dive straight in. Naming protagonists. It's not an easy thing to do, is it?
It's really hard. It is really hard. As she said, she went through, Alex, Laura, Jude, and that psychological barrier of, I can't write this till I get the name right. Now, I like to think I write every day. I don't have any hesitation sitting down. I write really fluently and fluidly. But the thing that always stops me in my tracks, I've got to name a character. And I sit there, and that's what makes me stare out into the window. and then I stare. I always do this, and it never works. I stare at my bookshelves and think, maybe I can name them after the author of a book, Terry Pratchett. No, I can't call them that. So then, as she said, you go to Google baby names, and you think, okay, my character's 25 years old. What are the popular names 25 years ago? And then maybe you tie it into a location. If they're born in America, what would they have been called then? And they can be a bit bland as well, as you said. There is this danger you can start giving characters the same names over and over. But there is a big psychological barrier. The best ones are where you go way back in history, and then you can name your character something like Ulysses P. Wunderbar or something like that, because that's memorable as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think so. A couple of things come to mind for me, in that I remember going and seeing a newborn baby at a maternity where one of my friends had a baby, and I went in there and I was all excited. As you are, it's like an amazing moment. And then and I knew that it was a boy. And as I walked up to the couple, looking completely blissed out, that kind of look after you've been up like 48 hours, first child as well. And I went, I said, this is amazing. I said, what's his name? And they said, we haven't decided yet. And I was thinking, And then I picked him up and went, "Oh, hello, you." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to call him.
TBC.
Yeah, it's and it's weird because, and I always talk about this in coaching. Actually, I say to people, if you want to make something official, if you want to like a podcast, for example, or a book or something you're thinking of doing, and you're crossing that threshold, the moment you cross the threshold is the moment you name it. But the problem is, the minute you've named it, you kind of know that within about a week, no matter how weird you think that name feels and how much you say, "Oh, yeah, it's just a work in progress name," you know that it starts to stick. Yeah. And I'll give you 2 examples of bands that did this. One was a small band known as the Beatles. And when you actually stop and think about their name, the Beatles, it's like the most, like what comes into your head? If you stop like Paul and John and Ringo, and I see these like Beatles, and it's a gross image, and you think, why did they pick that?
I can tell you, my Aunt Marion, who was a nun, she talks about this in her book, and because she was a nun, she was closed off from the rest of the world in the 60s, and her brother was telling her about this band, the Beatles, and she immediately thought of like cockroaches and things scuttling across the kitchen. She was like, why have they named the... Of course, it came from Buddy Holly and the Crickets. They liked the idea of the Crickets, so they thought the Beatles, and of course there was a pun in beat in the way they spelled it, so that's how that came about. But interesting. It's weird.
Who knew? So that's it's an interesting one, because I also understand that for a lot of people, there's a fear of naming the protagonist because they kind of know it's going to stick. And so I can totally understand. But, there's a very easy way out. You don't need to look at bookshelves. You don't have to sit and write down different names. You simply use those wonderful internet name generators. Yeah. And my favorite one, Mark, I'm going to try it on you now. We're going to find out what your porn star name's going to be.
Oh, God.
So you need to tell me. You need to tell me the name of the first pet you ever had, and and your childhood, the name of the childhood street where you lived in. So name of the pet first.
Goldie.
Goldie, and the street where you lived in your youth.
Well, let's go for a place called St. John's Way. So Goldie St. John. That is a good. I'm on OnlyFans, people. If you want to come over and check it out.
Mine. Do you want to know what mine is?
Go on, then.
It's dodgy. Mine is Nelly Revel. So everyone, tell us what your porn name is. Your porn star name. First name of your first pet, and the road that you grew up in. Now, joking aside, though, there are so many. I mean, there's brilliant ones. There's like Star Wars character. I've seen millions of them, and they're always hilarious. The most recent one is how to ruin a band's name. You just remove the last letter of their name. So you've got like Fleetwood Mac is one of my favorite ones, but you can create your own, and you could actually have your own unique way of creating characters based on the guy you most hate. Your antagonist should be the first name of the guy you most hated at school, because there's always that one kid that everyone didn't, that you didn't like, the bully or whoever it was. And then, I mean, what could the surname be, Mark? Something like the first company you worked for, maybe.
Maybe. Of course, what you must never, ever, ever do, if you can possibly avoid it, is name them after a real person. And that, because you remember we had our Legal Eagles episode, and they were talking about Jilly Cooper, who I think the story goes, you have to go, and I'll put a link in the show notes so you can check it out. It's one of my favorite episodes. I think it was Jilly Cooper, inadvertently, she didn't do it intentionally, but she named a doctor, gave this doctor a name, and this doctor was having affairs, and a real Harley Street GP said, I object to this. And, she had to pay him money. And I think, rename the character and reprint the book and all that kind of hassle. So it's worth, once, if you name your villain, say if you give them a name, it's worth Googling them to make sure that, yes, there will be a real person with that name. But if you make them, say, a GP or a lawyer, especially a lawyer, make sure you don't give them the same name, because there could be trouble ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a challenge to everyone's listening. If you've got a combination of how to generate a name, tell us, email us, and we'll stick it on our Facebook pages and we'll let people have some fun with it. And then we'll vote, Mark, on what we think is the best name generator for naming a protagonist and naming an antagonist. There's the challenge. So if we can give that out to the world, and put that out there. I think that would be a great service that we're doing to all those people that are struggling with their antagonistic names. And then, of course, they'll have a great story to tell us on the podcast, because I bet you in 2 years from now, we'll have someone on who's a multi-million seller and we'll say, so how did you come up with that? Well, I was listening to like episode 400. It's going to happen. I can totally see it happening. Brilliant. Now, here's another subject that is very close to both of our hearts. And Callie talked about how she uses a notebook in her writing process. I mean, we talked, I think over the years, I've seen you move gradually and now completely into like the notebook being a really important part of your writing process, especially that first draft, right?
It's happened live on the podcast over time. And I've got a big pile of them here, different one for each project. And I've got a general one that I just have for general notes. But for the Woodville books, I've gone a bit ridiculous because I'm using these are paper blanks, which are horribly expensive. But I got one because I was given a gift voucher for foils, and I thought I'm going to write the next Woodville book in one of these. And of course, it's not long enough for one of them. I'm on my second one already. But they got these little clasps, and they look amazing. And they got
it looks like something you'd find, like Frodo would find in Lord of the Rings.
Exactly.
Right.
So you're a complete sucker for that. But the paper is really good quality, and it's got a little ribbon and everything. And I know some people go, and we'll talk about this a bit more. This whole idea that the book is too nice to write in. No, full of scribbles. There's nothing I love more than a scribbly page and things crossed out and things overwritten and things written in the margins. I love it.
Well, here's the thing, Mark, as well. When you think about it, down the road, when you're like, multi-million selling author, and in years to come, your estate will have that tome. And, no one's ever sold a copy of Word at a Word document at an auction, as far as I'm aware. So there's something that you're creating there that becomes part of your personal history as well, in a family heirloom. When people want to go back and look at how Mark created this Witches of Woodville book, and they can see all the scribbles and notes, that is an insight into your mind. And you don't get that outside a notebook. Well, I know, right? If they can make sense of it.
But yeah, first of all, they need to be able to read my handwriting, which is the software hasn't been developed yet that can do that. Also, just to explain, those numbers at the bottom of each page, that's my word count every day. And I'd just like to say it's not 100% accurate. I might, I only do this once. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so that's not going to be accurate, but that's what those numbers are in the margins at the bottom. All sorts of weird stuff crossed out. And it is, I do write as if I'm writing in conversation with myself. So just to get the words coming, I will sometimes literally write, okay, where did we last see Faye? What is she thinking? What needs to happen next? Just almost just free writing kind of stuff that gets the pen moving. And before I know it, I'm actually writing prose that, might end up in a book.
Yeah. And I think it's super important for people who, if people have if they're struggling with electronics, I think for me, do you know what it is for me? And the reason why I don't read on a Kindle, I don't read ebooks very often. I mean, I will occasionally if we get sent one that we've got to read for the podcast, but and it's the only format we've got it in. But I love reading physical books and I love writing in physical books. And I'll tell you the one reason why is that the rest of my day I'm sitting in front of a screen. And for me, it's actually a way of it's like a well-being exercise for me. It's like meditation. Sitting and writing with a book, it feels so like, so nice. And so I think that's the bit no one's talking about. It's the fact that actually screens are now like phones, and I've got 2 monitors here in front of me. It's like I'm in cinema in here. And I work in the office. I can spend 8-10 hours a day sitting in the office in front of screens. So I find for me the joy of going down the road into the park or sitting at the beach with a book and just writing in it. It's like profound. It's a beautiful experience. Yeah. And I think that's why even more so today, notebooks are becoming more important or less important because of technology.
Yeah. Although they're not cheap. I mean, I'd look on the Papier website, and people complain about spending a tenner on a book or paperback or whatever. These things are between 20 and 30. I mean, they're personalized, and I'm sure the paper's lovely.
I will say it's kind of ironic that people complain about spending $6.99 on a book full of lovely, beautiful words that someone spent 2-3 years creating, and yet they'll quite happily go out and spend 25 or 30 pounds on a book with blank pages in it.
Blank pages.
What's the irony?
In the wrong business.
However, for all the notepad manufacturers out there, I would like to put forward a case for them, because I actually think there's certain things in life that I will happily and invest money in. That is a good pair of shoes, a good mattress, and a good notebook. And the reason being is that if you're just going to write scribble notes and it's just a rough, like, grocery lists, get something cheap, pitch it. But I've realized over the years, I've got a whole library now of bullet journals. I look at them as I'm on volume 10. And at the beginning, I used to buy cheapo, like the cheapest, like $8. I won't say where I got them from, but they barely made it through the 6 months I was writing them before the spine was giving way and pages were falling out. And so I think if you're going to be writing novels in books, or you're going to be writing a journal that you want to become part of your kind of life history, invest in a good notebook, because at the end of the day, it's one of those things that will hopefully outlast you. And so, good stitching, good quality paper. And there's something, don't you think, Mark, there's something nice about writing on quality paper?
You really notice the difference that it glides across the paper.
It's a different experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. And also there's things like I've done it all. I've tried different pens out, looking at the bleed on the other side of the page, because I was using a cheap highlighter the other day, a bright yellow one on a book that I'm reading, and on the opposite page it literally was almost as bright, and I was like, oh crap, I'll chuck the pen away. So paper is also important as well. But we're geeking out. There are people on TikTok and Instagram, they have entire videos, like 1 hour videos about the best pens to buy, the best paper to buy. It's like, people love this stuff.
Don't think you need to buy a posh notebook to be a best-selling novelist either. No. You can do it on a 99p book from the pound store or whatever, so it can be done. You just need a pen or a pencil and as much paper as you can get your words on. So it's just after a while you start fetishizing these things, and you become your own worst enemy, and before you know, it's spending 30 quid on a notebook.
Yeah, exactly. And then having your name, I think Callie said that she had her name actually customized on there,
personalized,
which is kind of cool. So listen, if you can afford that, awesome. We checked them out, actually. We were interested in going and checking them out, and we put a link to their, what we did though cheekily is we put a link to their website via our page, and we're going to do some kind of affiliate thing with them, which means that if you buy a book from Papier, Mark and I might be able to get a free notebook off the back of it.
Shameless.
See, you got whatever you can.
Perfect gift for Christmas, apart from my books.
That's right. and then we will write in that notebook a new novel, and we'll say it's because of you guys. So if you want to go and check out those ones, go via that link. It is an affiliate link. We have to declare that, but we'll do anything we can to keep the podcast going. So bestsellerexperiment.com/Papier, Papier, and that will go to their website. And if you buy a book from them, I think you'll get $10 off, and we'll get $5, something like that. And then if we can get enough to get a notebook mark between us, maybe, we'll split it down the middle. You can send my half to Canada. So Mark, the other thing that came up, which is very, very interesting, is how things are changing with online book launches. I mean, we talked about obviously through COVID, everyone was forced to do it. But as we said, there's always benefits that come from COVID. And I think now the online book launches are absolutely here to stay. I think they're almost an essential part of any book launch. Why would you not reach the whole world with your book launch rather than your local bookshop? I mean, what do you feel about that? Because you've done a number of them. Absolutely.
I mean, for a start, there's an accessibility thing. There are always people who, for whatever reason, can't go out, can't make it out, or, if they're vulnerable to COVID, don't want to go out, and who can blame them? So I think I've seen this at conferences and festivals and things like that, where they're using something like Discord or Zoom or StreamYard or whatever to allow people to be part of that experience one way or another. And it seems daft not to do it, because the tech is so easy now. You can do it on your phone if you've got a good broadband connection. It's a doddle to do. So why not do it? And I love them now. And as Callie was saying, you're sitting there, got your glass of water, you got a room full of people that you might not get in a bookshop. all sort of, hanging on your every word, asking questions, getting engaged, feeling part of the process. And I think that's something that's so important when you're nurturing your readership, the people who read your books, who are going to, come back and read more and tell their friends. If you make them feel part of an exclusive group or a family, they're much more likely to eulogize about you. Is that the right word? Probably not. To enthuse about you to other people across the world and sell more books. So it seems silly that we don't. And I mentioned Mark Edwards there, and when we had him on the show quite early on, what he was doing was fairly unique, having these live launches from his home. And he was a real sort of pioneer of that, and it's kind of become the norm now. And so yeah, it's I think they're definitely here to stay.
Well, the other thing that I find fascinating is it's a bit, whenever I've seen like local bookshop launches, there's been times when I've walked into a bookstore, and this breaks my heart, but I've walked into a bookstore just to browse, not really, it might be a Saturday afternoon, and there's the shopkeeper and one person standing in the store, and it's the book launch of their book, and they you've had that, and I'm sure a lot of people have been on the receiving end of it, and you kind of feel really, well, first you feel really bad, because no matter what their book's about, you kind of feel obliged that you've got to kind of buy it, because you think, you feel sorry. I feel sorry. It's like, because sometimes book launches are not done well. They're not public. If the author and the bookshop together don't go out and really publicize it, do a local press article, all that good stuff, no one's going to know about it. So it's literally the people that walk into the store. But even on a successful book launch in a local store, what are we talking? Maybe, a good crowd would be 25 people. And yet online, you can easily get, if you've started building a mailing list and done all the stuff we've been teaching about for years, you can easily get 25, if not 50, if not maybe 75 or 100. And so just from the kind of breadth of people that you can get in, I think doing the combination is really important. The other thing that I think is essential is, again, I use another music analogy. It's a bit like, and it's not quite as cool, but it's a bit like going and seeing your favorite band live, and that you have a different relationship with that band when you've seen them in the flesh. There's something about, you always listen to their music differently when you've actually been a part of a live gig. And that's why live music is so huge and so important, and the lifeblood of every musician. And I think the same effect happens to an extent when people get to meet an author. They're more likely to say, you should really read this author, their book's awesome, and I got to meet them and they were really lovely. It's that kind of personal side of things, which I know a lot of writers, some writers don't feel very comfortable with, which is fair enough. But it's a whole other area which I think is going to develop a lot more over the next few years because of online. And it's not the same. I know it's not the same online, is it? Like meeting someone in a bookshop. But
it's not necessarily worse or better. It's a different experience. And I think it's part of that launch week. It's one of those things that I think we should all be looking to do. And I love doing both. Shall I tell you my one person turning up?
Yes, I want to hear the story. Go on.
Well, this was just after Robot Overlords came out, and I was sent to the Bradford Literary Festival, and I was really excited because I'd been to the Bradford Waterstones, which is one of the most gorgeous bookshops in the world. Folks, do yourself a favour, Google Waterstones Bradford. It used to be a wool exchange, and it's got these marble columns. It's wow. Gorgeous. Absolutely. So I was like, yeah, I met Neil. First time I ever met Neil Gaiman was there. Wow. I dragged my poor wife up to the IMAX at the, because at the time it was the only IMAX in the UK at the Film Museum in Bradford. And we met Neil Gaiman there when Neverwhere was on TV, and he signed my first edition of Good Omens. That's another story. So yeah, I went up to the Bradford Literary Festival. Now, Bradford Literary in retrospect, this is so obvious, but Bradford Literary Festival is very literary, and it's very big on kind of books on politics, and it's more of a, it's very literary, very political, and my little book about robots. Well, so I go to Waterstones, and I'm there with David Barnett. David, bless him, looked after me for the day. And was sort of taking me around, and we went to the bookshop and there was no one there. No one, not sausage. So what they did, I feel so sorry for this kid. Like, I think it was the manager or assistant manager's son, who was about the right age, 10 or 11, was sort of wheeled out to meet me, the poor kid. And he had this look at his face as if, why am I here? Why am I so that I wouldn't feel bad. So anyway, I signed his book. What made me feel less bad about it is that in the same week, even Ben Aronovich only got 8 people turning up to his event. So, you know, horses for courses. It was the wrong festival for the wrong book. But and thanks to David for showing me around. It was looking after me.
That story, Mark, reminds me of the part in Back to Reality we wrote about the staged crowd. Do you remember? When she has her first press launch in...
That's probably where it came from.
LA, right? Yeah, there's a bit of everything you read in Back to Reality... and actually all the Glastonbury stuff, a lot of that comes from my experience, right? There's a lot of stuff in there, so it's great. So as Bryan Cranston told us, and remind everyone, you know, no matter what, how bad as opportunity or situation happens, there's always a good story that comes out the back of it. It's great. Brilliant stuff. Well, we would like to talk much more about this wonderful interview with Callie, with CL Taylor. But we don't have time to do it on this podcast. But if you would like to join us for the extended podcast, that is for all Academy members and patrons. We are going to talk about wants, needs, and flaws. We're going to talk about resolutions, inciting incidences, the fear of the first page, and why you don't want to spoil our idea by writing it, and why it's important to start that first chapter, taking the pressure off. So if you want to join us in an extra maybe 20, 30 minutes of deep diving on those things, pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/support and become a supporter of the podcast today. So, Mr. Stay, let's talk about the wins on social media this week.
Yeah, got some lovely stuff. We've got a couple, but they're quite long. And I want to go into this a bit. So we got a lovely message from Natalie Perry, who was on the podcast because she looked after me when I went to the Scooby conference a few years ago. So I must dig that out and put a link in the show notes. And Natalie is a children's author and illustrator. And she wrote to us a few weeks ago saying, I'm almost, I'm sending my stuff out there. I've been doing this for years. And she sent us a lovely note, essentially saying, I'm on the verge of giving up, but you guys keep me going, which I thought was lovely. Well, anyway, she says, things have been unreal since I wrote to you last. And I'm so excited to say that in the last couple of weeks, I've been offered and accepted representation by a literary agent. It's all still feeling a little floaty and surreal. Everything was confirmed on Friday. I'm still waiting for someone to tell me they meant another Natalie with a different manuscript. But I asked, it's definitely me, and he wants to work with me. Phew. And she says, I sent you both a huge thank you as I was coming out of a tough time in my writing. I want to send another thank you as I cheerfully embark on the next leg of my journey. I am indeed taking the long and convoluted road to publication, but I'm enjoying the view as I go. The bestseller experiment is a sort of writing equivalent to energy bars and a first aid kit I carry with me on the way, covering everything from accountability to industry information to caring for your mental health and inspiring stories. It's everything a writer needs for the long and bumpy road. And this is just, she put on her Instagram 10 years of writing for young people, 130 query letters.
Wow.
130 query letters. I know people go, well, I've sent 10 out and I've not heard anything back. 130. So this is just wonderful. So Natalie, who writes as Poppy T. Perry, Natalie, thank you so much for that. You're going to inspire so many people with this, and thank you for all your support and listening and everything over the years. It's just been amazing, and I could not be happier for you.
Yeah, and Natalie, congratulations on your persistency, because we've always said this over and over and over on the podcast, is that you only fail when you give up. You only fail when you give up. And 130 letters, and now it's happened for you. And now you get to tell the story. That's the bit I love. You get to go out there and say, 100, and now you get to see what happens, how your career potentially unfolds, and inspire everyone else who's there thinking, it's never going to happen and I'm going to give up. I think it's brilliant. Well, I did have a cheeky thought in the background, Mark, when you said about, is it the same Natalie? I was wondering if when she submits a manuscript to the agent and he says, oh, I thought you were going to tell us about Russell Brand and all the music that you're doing. Katy Perry. Oh, Natalie. Right? But I'm sure you're good. Natalie. Yeah, brilliant stuff.
She's absolutely brilliant. And over on the Academy, a lovely note from in the wins section from Kay Vincent, who's the headline is, "This accountability thing really works for me." So the main reason for joining the Academy was that I wanted to edit and finish my fantasy novel. So far, I've been having fun following the roadmap modules and avoiding the actual thing that I joined up for. But then when she joined, she signed up for a writing buddy, and she's got Charlotte and Rosie writing buddies. It's just the mere knowledge that I had an accountability partner push me into finally dusting off my manuscript yesterday. And then I discovered a brilliant but awful thing. I could have sworn that the story was around 80,000 words, but it turns out that just before the COVID blah, I'd done a load of work on the manuscript and managed to reach over 130,000 words, and then somehow completely forgotten I'd done it. If only I'd known, I might have finished the whole first draft by now. I feel horrified and elated at the same time. How could I have forgotten I'd done all that work? So yes, it turns out that having the accountability of a writing buddy combined with a daily target for editing and writing seems to work for me. If anyone else is a black belt level procrastinator like me, I thoroughly recommend signing up as a writing buddy. I'll see you over on the spreadsheet in November. Isn't that brilliant?
That's
Thank you
fantastic.
So much for that, Kate.
And for people hearing that, thinking accountability buddy, what's all that about? Well, on the Academy, we actually have a section where you can sign up for a monthly writing buddy, and we change people. We change it every month, so you get to know somebody, but you're both as kind of committed to it as each other because you're both in there trying to achieve the same thing. And it's the reason that it's been, that I developed that in the Academy is it's super important to make it as easy as possible to find these people. I think in life in general, I mean, we know it works for things like, if you want to go running and you find a buddy that will get you out of bed at 6:30 in the morning in their tracksuit waiting at the door, you're going to have to go and join them. And I've done it. I've had writing buddies on the Academy myself, and it's brilliant. And you get to also go through not just, challenges, I didn't get to write today or whatever it might be, but you also get to talk about some of the, you realize you're not alone. You realize that everyone else is going through the same challenges that you are when you kind of journey with someone for that month. So yeah, it's something I highly recommend if you haven't got an accountability buddy yet. Brilliant.
It's great stuff. Folks, you can find us on social media. On Facebook, we're Bestseller Experiment. On Twitter and Instagram, we are at BestsellerXP. If you want to drop us a line, go to bestsellerexperiment.com. There's a contact tab there. You can email us directly. And if you've enjoyed this episode with Kelly or any of the episodes with our amazing authors and guests, please subscribe, give us a rating, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks as always to JD and Dave, our editors.
Absolutely. And don't forget, folks, if you'd like to create the writing habit of a lifetime, 200-word challenge is a free challenge where we say, come along and try it for a week. See if you can write for 7 days consecutively, 200 words a day. It will, I promise you, if you stick with it, it will change your writing life. And so pop along to 200wordchallenge.com. And also, if you didn't hear the extended version of this podcast, remember you can hear an extra, I think about 30 minutes, Mark, wasn't it, of deep diving into so many of the different areas that Callie talked about. And you can get that episode by going to bestsellerexperiment.com/support or joining the Bestseller Academy at academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. And finally, a quick reminder for everyone, if you want to join us at the live show, don't forget to sign up to the newsletter. Pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com and then click on the newsletter link, pop in your name, and we will send you updates and a weekly email about the Academy. And Mr. State, if your week is anywhere as long as this podcast, it's going to be a good one. Absolutely brilliant. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And again, we hope you have an incredible writing week. We hope you've been inspired. And if you have been inspired, please write in and let us know. Tell us your story. Tell us how something an author said on this podcast changed your writing life. We always love to get those. And you can do that by going to the Contact Us page on our website at bestsellerexperiment.com. So it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And a tatty bye from Mark 2.
Goodbye. Bye.